One in five suffer.
Erase the stigmas.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Monday. I'm Dave.
And I'm Marla. I'm masked Marla. Go ahead, Dave.
I almost didn't know who you were. I couldn't recognize you. I just want to let you know that the show is brought to you today by NAMI San Fernando Valley and Loving Beyond Reason.
Speaking of Loving Beyond Reason, I want to showcase my new fashion statements, which are the masks that are benefiting mental health. So mental health, masks for mental health, and these are Mimi's masks.
Absolutely. And for those of you who don't know, Mimi is my mother, Marla's mother, my mother-in-law. I love her so much. She's like my actual mother, and Marla's mother. And you can buy her mask and other masks that actually help fund mental health
support for the foundation
for Loving Beyond Reason at lovingbeyondreason.org. Today, our guest is Mark Gale. He's the Criminal Justice Chair for NAMI Greater Los Angeles, and he leads a family support group. He's led a family support group and still does for many years, and he is a wealth. When I say a wealth of information and a source, a great resource for anyone who is either going through mental health challenges themselves or has a loved one.
Helping to navigate the justice system. He's active when it comes to writing, literally. Mark Gale writes, I want to say, are you writing bills?
He writes
Mark,
policy.
You're writing policy
No,
changes.
I don't write legislation, but I will send a letter to support or oppose legislation.
Okay.
Well, he doesn't realize that he's been a great help to us as well. And when we come back, we'll have our conversation with Mark Gale.
Hey guys, listen up. Learn something.
All right, we're back that quickly, Mark. And welcome to the show. I know you're a very busy man, and we are very honored to have you with us today. I don't even know if you remember when our son was actually going through some of his challenges with the criminal justice system here in the Los Angeles area. You were one of the first people that NAMI San Fernando Valley then, which is now NAMI Greater Los Angeles.
Chapter, right, GLAC.
That chapter, literally, you were the first name that they said, this is the man that you have to call. And we didn't even know where our son was at the beginning. Because he was picked up when he was in the middle of an episode. And by the time it was just God's grace that we miraculously found out where he was. And then it was, I guess you had written a standardized form that is now standard for helping people in the criminal justice system in jail to be able to get the medication that they need. And I was able to use that to get my son his Invega.
Yeah, that was actually probably the first thing I did as an advocate when my son was arrested back in 2002. And there was a project between myself and co-authored with Jim Randall and Carla Jacobs. And Jim gave me a call one night and said, we need a crisis file, a guide for what you do if your family member's been arrested. So that's what we called it. My family member's been arrested. What do I do? And we tried to give some just basic information that families would need to advocate for their loved ones from arrest to arraignment. So it certainly wasn't a treatise on the criminal justice system, but it was sort of a crisis file for families. And in the companion piece to that was something I did develop called the Inmate Medication Information Form. And both of those pieces are still on the they put them up on the sheriff's website back in 2003. They're still there, still being used. We've updated the guide last time. It's been about 5 years. And we've used that as tools to help spread that ability for families to get information into jail clinicians regarding medical and psychiatric information And that's now used in at least 15 jails in California.
Wow.
And actually, I've helped other NAMIs in other states implement it there too.
Yes, you're definitely a lot of people's angel when it comes to that, your advocacy.
I wanted to ask you, Mark, because I know that you too, as do we, which drives most of us who are advocates, to hear a little bit more about your story of how you became impassioned and for the work that you do.
Your entry to the advocacy that you do, yeah.
Well, just like you, I had no interest in psychiatry or psychology or serious mental illness, nor the criminal justice system. But our son's behavior started to turn pretty dramatically about age 13. And by the time he was age 15, his behavior was really off the charts, and we were getting quite concerned and really scared. We had no idea what we were dealing with. There was criminal juvenile behavior. We knew that there was some experimentation with drugs going on, and he started getting in trouble as a juvenile. Oftentimes we were his victims, and it was, but sometimes other people too, and he really started to get into some trouble. And we just, we did everything that parents would normally do. You call the school, you have a meeting with the guidance counselor, you call the school, you have a meeting with the dean. We knew there was a lot of truancy going on. We just tried to be good parents, and it just, everything, it just kept accelerating. And the choices he was making became more and more unsafe. And finally, in 10th grade, we started an IEP process. And that
and for those who don't know what that is,
so an IEP is an individual educational program, under the Individual with Disabilities with Education Act, which is the federal legislation that now governs this. Now, it's different when we did it years ago. My son's 37 now, so this was a long time ago. But back then we had a different law, a state law called AB 3632 that mandated services, and particularly mental health services for kids. And you would start that legal process by asking the principal of the school for an IEP. And you'd get together with the teachers and the counselors and the school psychologists and try to see what resources the school could bring to bear to give your kid what you need. Because under the law, every kid is entitled to a free FAPE, a free and appropriate public education, and they must, by law, provide the resources necessary to do that, which gets expensive, so they fight it. And things changed in 2011 after we went through this process, and schools were realigned in 2011. But, our situation got more severe. We started talking about residential placement. And in the end, in order to save his life, we had to put him in an out-of-state locked placement, sort of like a locked psychiatric facilities school in Utah. And that was very difficult. That was the hardest thing I think I ever had.
Now, when he was in Utah in that facility, were you able to visit back and forth often?
Only once a quarter. They would fly us in once a quarter. If he had earned privileges, we could go out and take him to dinner. First couple times, we just had to sit on the lawn and be together. It was really the most heartbreaking experience I think we went through, because it was just so hard. And of course, he was angry about it, and I don't blame him for that. But at the time, it was the only thing we could do. He was disappearing for weeks at a time, and things were really off the charts.
A lot of people don't realize, you touched on something earlier when you said that you and your wife were also the victims of some of the aggressive behavior from your own son. And at the same time, you're trying to maintain your love, which you have for your child. And we, like Marla said, we've been there, and still have to fight a system that is not always easy to deal with.
No, and I think what's important is we were doing this without the benefit of NAMI services or going through family to family. That was really hard because we did not know what we were dealing with. We would take him to psychologists, and we were told that we had a juvenile delinquent with a drug problem or oppositional defiance. But we really weren't getting the help that we need, and it was, it really wasn't until he came back. He aged out. He turned 18. They had aged out of the system. He was now a legal adult. He came back. And,
well, Mark, let's put a pin in that part of your story right quick, because it's such an interesting story.
No.
And we're going to let you get to it,
back.
but we have to take a quick little break, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
When Dave and Marla get together, it's hot. Marla, Dave.
It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave.
When LA Sheriff's Captain Tanya Plunkett started work in 2013, she says mentally ill inmates were only housed on the 6th and 7th floor of the Twin Towers at the Los Angeles County Central Jail. To date, Tanya notes both towers consist entirely of mentally ill inmates. In the past decade, the jail system's mentally ill population has grown to nearly 5,000 inmates, with some 3,000 being held in the jail's Twin Towers.
By default, Director of Mental Health Tim Belovich says the LA County jail system has become the largest mental health treatment facility in the country. He sadly notes jail is not the appropriate place to treat someone's mental illness. And as Director Kristen Ochoa notes, the average person must see that something needs to change. It's so apparent that the numbers are growing.
Most inmates with mental health challenges do not belong in jail. And as Judge Curlin says, this can be done, and it's worthwhile.
This message is brought to you by NAMI San Fernando Valley and Loving Beyond Reason.
David is a thinker.
I never do anything without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically wear my personality on my sleeve.
But when Marla and Dave get together, it's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
All right, Mark, as we promised, you were really updating us on the story, and, we ask you to please continue.
So your piece there actually segues nicely. So, when he came back home, we have finally, I'm going to skip a lot of detail.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom line is he ended up, we had to ask him to leave the home, and we tried to find housing for him. We found a teen sober living house, but in the end, he got in trouble and he committed a crime and he got arrested. So this is November 2002 back then. And I had just discovered NAMI. So we were going to a lot of AA meetings and NA meetings and CA meetings and recovery meetings. And there was a lot of wisdom in the room about recovery, but they were not dealing with what we were dealing with. We were dealing with something else. And we just couldn't find what we were looking for. I actually read a book from named Detour from a woman named Lizzie Simon, who was the person who told me about, I emailed her and thanked her for her book because she was a young woman at the time with bipolar disorder. And it was sort of like getting inside her head and looking through her eyes. Yeah. And I thanked her for her book because it gave me some understanding. And her dad was a psychiatrist, and she talked to her dad. And Dad says, tell him to go find NAMI. I didn't know what NAMI was, but one day I had an 800 number, and I was very upset, and I called. And that led me to my dear friend, Carla Jacobs, who was our criminal justice expert.
Wow.
And she started helping me with my son's case and teaching me how to navigate the system. So, I didn't pick this subject matter, it picked me. And my son was in Twin Towers, and all told, unfortunately, he spent a year of his life there, aggregated in 4 different times. I learned about mental health courts. And immediately that made me an advocate. And the NAMI members that I had met I met Jim Randall in my family class, and I told my story about trying to contact a doctor at the jail and tell the doctor what medication my son should be on and what medication he should not be on.
Now, how receptive was the doctor when you were giving those suggestions?
Well, I couldn't get a doctor on the phone. Wow. I spent 25 hours in a week on hold trying to get a doctor. And finally, Jim said, hey, a bunch of us are going to go down and meet with the commander who runs the jail. You sound kind of upset. Maybe you'd like to come along. And that's how I got started. So they actually pitched an educational program. We wanted similar to CIT, we wanted to train sheriff deputies about mental illness. That was the beginning of what was then called the NAMI Los Angeles County Criminal Justice Committee. And we actually did train sheriff deputies for about 18 months to 2 years. Unfortunately, the program disbanded when we sort of ran out of volunteer gas. And but I had an opportunity to talk with the commander, and he said, "What do you want?" I said, "I want a system whereby we can fax information into the jail," and that led to the medication form and the arrested guide. And that's how I get started. And then you just start learning and growing from there. PBS did SoCal Connected actually did a piece on what we were doing at the jail. Now, this was a dozen years before the Office of Diversion and Reentry was started. This was a dozen years before Jackie Lacey's office wrote the Blueprint for Change. And it wasn't just me. It was a lot of different NAMI members, and we did vigils down at the jail. We did everything we could think of, but the county wasn't listening.
Were you instrumental in the initiation of Court 95 here in Los Angeles?
That's not a criminal court. That's a civil court, and Court 95 has always been there to do capacity hearings for people who are deemed possibly incompetent to stand trial, or and would need to either go to a state hospital. And we didn't start restoring people in the community till the Office of Diversion and Reentry was formed, thanks to Judge Bianco's work. And so a lot of years went by, and all we wanted to get was a mental health court.
Yeah,
you could not get what they called a specialty court, boutique court, and LA wouldn't have it. And so we fought to try to get mental health court. The mental health court linkage program existed prior to this and still does, thanks to the work of Elisa Dunn from the Department of Mental Health and her team. But that was it. That was all we had. And she saved my son from going to prison. And if you weren't lucky enough to get in that program, you went into criminal court and you were sentenced just like anybody else.
Right.
So after a dozen years of nobody listening, when finally the county was convened by District Attorney Jackie Lacey and started to form committees, and which eventually led to ODR, the Office of Diversion and Reentry. I represent NAMI on the Permanent Steering Committee for ODR. That was a long time coming, and I can't tell you how much good has been done. I just got off a meeting with them and got updated on new numbers, and now we're very concerned because of the lockdown and the pandemic that the funding is going to go away, and we won't be able to keep doing what we're doing. Just a couple of figures. ODR has gotten 2,718 people have been screened. There's 929 in process. The 824 people were released across ODR clinical programs. That means you were released from jail as a condition of your probation that you agreed to, and you were placed in a treatment program for either mental illness, substance abuse, or both, given transitional housing. Of those, several, I think over 527 people have been put in permanent supportive housing. So, we have been leading the nation in really trying to get people with mental illness out of the jail long before it became sort of the current topic of the day.
And well, thank God that it is finally becoming a current topic today. And we definitely appreciate all of your advocacy and your hard work. I see a drum set behind you, and when we come back in the next segment, we'll have to touch on, as you know, I'm a musician as well, so we'll have to touch on...
Are you guys going to start a band? Just tell me now.
That's right, and I just placed you. Now I know.
Yeah, and if that's the case, you remember I'm a dancer.
We'll be right back with more of Mark Gale.
Known and respected throughout the world.
This radio show is
Crazy.
Hi-Fi sound. This is real radio.
All right, it's time for our poll question this week.
What's the question, Dave?
The poll question this week is, what percentage of young people with a substance use disorder have a co-occurring mental illness? Your options are 20%, 45%, or 66%. Mark, I'm sure that you probably know this answer.
My guess would be, I think it's probably 66%.
And that quickly, we're right back.
We always are appreciative of the advocacy. We're appreciative of the stories. Man, because we've been through this, and I wanted to get a beat from you on what now. We are, like you said, and you mentioned something going out before our last segment that I want to really bring back to light. Those of us who've been fighting you way longer than we have, but before it was the topic of the day, we've been fighting for a long time. My foundation was, again, like you. This wasn't something I chose as a life's passion. It chose me based on the love that I have for my son and the circumstances, unfortunately, that he found himself in by no fault of his own. So my question is, now it is a topic. Now there is a focus on it. What now?
So, and first of all, I hope your son is doing really well.
He's hanging in there. We have a lot more work to do, but we do have him. He's safe.
He's safe at home, as a matter of fact.
That's great. That's great. So, so when you get into the Stepping Up initiative, which NAMI is very involved in, which basically markets social justice and criminal justice reform as it pertains to mental illness around the country, and over 500 counties have signed on to the Stepping Up initiative, which is, and if people are interested in what the model is, it's called the sequential intercept model, which was written, an academic paper that was written in 2008, and that's what the Stepping Up initiative is based on. So it gives you a roadmap on, it's what we used in LA County, and it gives us a roadmap of how to reform the criminal justice system to divert people out of incarceration into treatment. But again, when you think about it, all of that is not proactive, it's reactive.
Mm-hmm.
The catastrophe has already occurred.
Yep.
Somebody didn't get the treatment that they needed. Somebody, had an episode, came to the attention of law enforcement, committed a violation of the penal code, got arrested. Now they not only had a mental health treatment problem, they also had a criminal justice problem.
Yes.
Yep.
But it's all because they couldn't get the level of care that they need.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As I've gone on year after year with this, and you fight for mental health courts, you fight for diversion programs, you fight for the money and the resources to get these things done.
Yes.
You fight for the different kinds of courts. There's treatment courts, veterans courts, homeless courts, all the different programs that you need to sort of cover all the different permutations of people that become ill and need services and support. But in the end, you have to give people the level of care that they need.
Mm-hmm.
And mental illness is a difficult subject. It's hard to get your arm around it.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, so we don't have a full continuum. We don't have a full spectrum from A to Z. What we have is we've made a choice in 2004 with the Mental Health Services Act to provide funding to try to create a robust outpatient system. And that helps many, many, many people and expanded the system at a time when the system was crashing. And it went along with the deinstitutionalization era of getting people out of hospitals, out of state hospitals, and all that is good, but there are some people who do need a higher level of care. And many of the people who are going through the criminal justice system are those folks, right? They don't engage with the outpatient system. They don't agree to treatment, often voluntarily, and there's a multitude, there's 1,000 reasons somebody might not want to agree to engage in treatment. But a lot of times, some of the people who are the most ill are also the people who are ending up in the jail. Jail is the bed that never says no. if you need a hospital bed, if you're in crisis and you can't get one, and you start acting out in public, eventually you're going to come to the attention of law enforcement. And if they can't find a hospital bed and you've committed a violation, you're going to end up in jail.
Absolutely.
And I believe that's what we have experienced is generally that is the process, because beds, number one, are very hard to come by. And I know that for our son, he was ordered on a 5152, and he was taken to a county facility and released because he told whatever happened in his conversation that transpired. He had canceled his bank accounts and he had no SSI. And they literally put him out on the street. And at that time,
in 3 days.
Yeah, he was violent and we couldn't have him back home. So one thing led to another, and yes, he ended up
was episodic,
incarcerated.
and no one knew where he was, and
right,
he ended up in jail.
So what you're saying is accurate.
Yeah, especially moving
we had a good economy going into the lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
So the Board of Supervisors was ready to expand these programs, provide more funding. Dr. Sharon from the Department of Mental Health was had written a plan for the supervisors to create 500 more beds at various different licensing categories. Does it solve the problem? No, but it's a start.
Mm-hmm.
I would tell the advocates listening, pick up your pen, pick up your computer, and write the governor and tell him that he needs to backfill realignment revenues, both 1991 and 2011 realignment, which are crashing. We have a $3.3 billion shortfall. The money that serves the people who are the most sick, it pays for clinics, IMDs, which are places, residential locked facilities for conservatees, who are people who have been found by the court to be gravely disabled, acute care, psychiatric hospitals. Those things are not paid for by MHSA revenues, and
Correct.
Those revenues are going to be down too. But the realignment revenues are crashing. And if he doesn't backfill, you're going to see our acute system and subacute system crash as well. And if the money's not there, they can't keep the beds open. And guess what? All those people are going to end up back in jail again.
Yeah.
So all the good things we've done are going to go blow
But
up.
right, we're going to
So
slide backwards.
not only are we not going to make any progress on the proactive side of treatment, but we are going to even lose ground on the reactive side post incident. And so, like Mark said, please pick up your pen, your paper, get on your computer, write letters, get on the internet to your state representatives and to the governor, and insist that those funds be backfilled.
And NAMI California has already written a sample letter. Advocates are writing their own as well, but you could contact NAMI California in Sacramento. They can give you a copy of their sample letter. You don't have to be an expert on the subject. The expertise is already there. The letter's already written. You can add a personal paragraph, sign your name, and send it in.
Absolutely. Those resources, as Mark has said, are on the NAMI website, NAMI.org. And if you're in California, in any one of the area chapters, you can find those resources. Please become active and help us take care of the ones that we love.
Your voice needs an action for sure, so we can actually get these things in effect.
We're going to come right back, Mark, and wrap the show.
Hold that thought right there. We'll be right back.
And wrap the show.
It's raw, real, and unfiltered.
All right, Mark, go ahead. What was that final closing
So I'm
thought?
just a slight correction. So NAMI.org would be the NAMI National
The
site.
national, yeah.
This would be NAMI CA for California, NAMICA.org.
Okay, and what I was referring to, as Mark has correctly corrected me, but if you go on the NAMI national site, you can find all of your local chapters from there. If you can't remember all of the acronyms that we will shout out
that's
today.
important anyway, because we don't just broadcast to California. So we
Absolutely.
broadcast all over the world. So the bottom line is, even within our country, that NAMI is, which I call NAMI, the first and the last breath of mental help. It went for support. And when I say first and last breath, when we were at our last, we were broken over the events with our son. NAMI breathed a first breath back into us as far as process and hope, for sure.
Well, Mark,
our CEO of NAMI Greater Los Angeles County, Brittany Weissman, recently wrote an advocacy letter And she used the term, we are the first responders.
It's true.
When it comes to mental health, and that's true. We are.
Well, Mark, we were only able to scratch the surface.
Yeah,
to,
really. We need part 2
the
and
wealth and depth of your story. And
he needs a mini-series.
Yes, we will definitely have to have you back. And before we go right quick, like I said, I see the drum set behind you. How good at you when you sit down behind the track?
Well, I'm about 40 years out of practice, but I can still do it.
We'll get together and have a jam session one day.
I would love that.
Let's make sure that we let everybody know where. So, as we mentioned, NAMI SFV, which is the San Fernando or NAMI Greater Los Angeles chapter,
yes.
GLAC, .org. And please, guys, join us, get active, write. Use your voices. Use everything you have. This is a problem that we definitely need to continue to pay attention to and push forward.
Our guest has been Mark Gale, the Criminal Justice Chair for NAMI Greater Los Angeles chapter. Thank you, Mark, for everything that you do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, man, we appreciate you.
You are an angel for real. I don't know if anybody...
Absolutely.
Wait a minute. Is that a halo or is that...
I see that.
Is that the back
maybe
of
I
the
thought it was a
closet?
drum set, but those are wings back there.
Yeah, that must be wings.
This is quarantine hairdo.
Have a good one, man. Thank you guys for checking us out, and see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.